the US Army just committed $1.5 billion to turn the M1 Abrams into something Russia's tank forces have never faced before. Not a replacement, an evolution that makes every previous version obsolete. And the changes aren't cosmetic. They're rewriting the rules of armored warfare. Here's what Moscow is really up against. Russia learned hard lessons in Ukraine. Their T-72 seconds and T-90 seconds, tanks that looked formidable on paper, turned into scrap metal when Western anti-tank systems arrived. Javelin missiles, NLAW rockets, drones dropping grenades through open hatches. The Russian tank doctrine that dominated Cold War planning crumbled against modern precision weapons and networked warfare. But here's the problem. Those lessons cut both ways. If Russian armor is vulnerable, so is everyone else's. Ukrainian Leopard 2 seconds have been knocked out. Challenger 2 seconds have taken hits. Even older Abrams tanks suffered losses when handed to less experienced crews. The threat isn't just Russia's tanks. It's the entire ecosystem of modern anti-armor warfare. Top attack missiles, loitering munitions, electronic warfare that blinds targeting systems, hypersonic missiles that can reach the battlefield before tanks even deploy. Current upgrade programs aren't enough. Reactive armor stops some threats. Active protection systems intercept others. But no tank on Earth today can survive everything the next war will throw at it. Not for long. Can the upgraded M1 Abrams dominate a battlefield where tanks are supposed to be obsolete? The M1 Abrams has been America's main battle tank since 1980. Over 10,000 built. Combat proven in Desert Storm, Iraq, and dozens of smaller conflicts. But the version rolling off production lines in 2025 shares almost nothing with those Gulf War legends, except the name. The upgrade, officially designated the M1E3 Abrams, represents the biggest leap in American tank design in 40 years. Not incremental improvements, a fundamental rethinking of what a tank needs to survive and kill in an era when everything from $500 drones to $3 million missiles wants it dead. Russia fields roughly 12,000 tanks, though readiness rates tell a different story. China operates around 5,000 modern, Type 99 seconds and Type 96 second. Both nations are developing next-generation platforms, but neither has committed the resources America just poured into making one platform untouchable. This matters globally, because tank battles aren't extinct, they've evolved. Ukraine proved that armor still decides ground wars, but only if it can survive long enough to close with the enemy. The country that figures out survivable, networked, lethal armor first doesn't just win tank battles. It controls how future wars are fought. But here's where it gets interesting. The M1E3 isn't trying to be invincible. It's trying to be invisible. Every tank commander's nightmare is the same. You're blind until the moment you're dead. Traditional tank optics give you a porthole view of the battlefield. Thermal sights help at night, but you're still searching manually, rotating a turret, hoping you spot the threat before it spots you. In Ukraine, Russian tank crews died because they never saw the Javelin team 1.5 miles away, or the drones circling 400 feet overhead. The M1E3 flips this equation. It doesn't wait to be hunted, it hunts first. The upgrade integrates a 360-degree sensor suite that fuses data from multiple sources. Ground-penetrating radar that detects buried IEDs, millimeter wave radar that tracks incoming projectiles, electro-optical cameras that scan for heat signatures, and acoustic sensors that triangulate enemy fire the instant a gun fires. Not as separate systems requiring separate operators, as one unified picture displayed on high-resolution screens inside the turret. This is where most analysts focus on crew comfort. What this really means is the Abrams sees threats before they enter weapon range. A tank battalion, equipped with M1E3S, creates a surveillance net across dozens of square miles. Each tank feeds targeting data to every other tank in real time. The enemy doesn't face 14 separate targets. They face one distributed weapons system that knows where every threat is, who's best positioned to engage it, and which ammunition type will kill it fastest. Unlike Russian tanks that still rely heavily on visual identification and manual fire control, the M1E3 can engage targets its crew has never directly seen, using targeting data shared from drones, helicopters, infantry units, and even satellites. Fire a shot at 1 Abrams, and 4 others already know your exact position. But here's the kicker. All those sensors make the tank massively more detectable to enemy electronic warfare, which is why the second upgrade had to happen. Stealth technology in a 70-ton tank? Sounds like science fiction. It isn't. The M1E3 doesn't use radar-absorbing paint or cloaking devices. It uses geometry, materials science, and thermal management to become exponentially harder to detect and target. Start with the turret redesign. The M1E3 features a lower-profile turret with angled surfaces that deflect radar returns instead of bouncing them straight back to enemy sensors. This isn't cosmetic. Radar cross-section testing showed the new turret reduces detectability by roughly 40% compared to previous Abrams variants. That might not sound revolutionary until you realize modern anti-tank missiles rely on millimeter-wave radar for terminal guidance. Make yourself 40% harder to lock onto, and suddenly, missiles that should hit start missing. Then there's thermal management. Tanks are massive heat sources. The engine, the gun after firing, and even the crew generates infrared signatures that thermal optics can spot from miles away. The M1E3 incorporates a thermal camouflage system that uses liquid cooling channels embedded in the hull and turret skin. Pump coolant through those channels, and you can reduce the tank's thermal signature below the background temperature of the surrounding terrain for limited periods, long enough to break a thermal lock or reposition before an attack helicopter reacquires you. Cost for this signature reduction package, approximately $2.8 million per tank, roughly the price of 5 Javelin missiles. The acoustic signature also dropped. The upgraded engine and new exhaust baffling system make the M1E3 quieter than any previous main battle tank. Not silent. Nothing weighing 70 tons is silent, but quiet enough that enemy listening posts can't pinpoint it from engine noise alone. In urban combat, where sound echoes off buildings and locating threats is survival, this matters enormously. But there's one problem nobody's talking about. Reducing signatures helps you avoid detection, but once you fire that 120mm main gun, every sensor for 10 miles knows exactly where you are. Which brings us to the weapon that changes everything. The M1E3 still fires the same 120mm smoothbore cannon that's armed Abrams tanks for decades. But what it fires has changed completely. Enter the Advanced Multi-Purpose Round, AMP for short. One projectile that replaces 4 different ammunition types that the crew used to carry: anti-tank, anti-personnel, anti-structure, airburst. The AMP round uses a programmable fuse that the crew sets milliseconds before firing based on target type. Engaging a Russian T-90, the fuse programs the round to penetrate armor, then detonate inside the crew compartment. Engaging infantry in a building, the round penetrates the wall and airbursts inside the room. Engaging a drone swarm, the round detonates in mid-air, creating a shrapnel cloud that shreds multiple targets. This isn't just convenience. It's a fundamental shift in how tanks operate. Previous Abrams variants carried around 40 main gun rounds, split between different types: sabot rounds for armor, high explosive for infantry, canister rounds for close defense. The crew had to identify the target, decide which ammunition to use, and hope they loaded the right type. In a fast-moving battle, that mental overhead got people killed. The M1E3 carries 42 AMP rounds. Every single one is the right round. The fire control computer analyzes the target, selects the optimal fuse setting, and programs it automatically. Crew decision time cut by 60%. Ammunition loadout flexibility effectively infinite. Now add the extended range guided projectile currently in testing. Standard 120mm rounds max out around 2.5 miles. The new guided round, using course-correcting fins and a laser designator, can engage targets beyond 5 miles with precision accuracy. That's twice the effective range of Russia's best tank-fired missiles. Here's what that means in practice. An M1E3 can sit hull down behind a ridgeline, completely protected, and engage enemy armor before Russian tanks even know they're under fire. By the time Russian crews react, they're already burning. Cost per amp round: approximately $10,000. Cost per enemy tank destroyed: 1 round, $10,000. Cost of losing an Abrams to enemy fire: $10 million, plus trained crew. The math is brutal, but ammunition only matters if you survive long enough to fire it, which is why the final upgrade is the one that kept Russian planners up at night. Active Protection Systems, APS for short. The concept is simple: detect incoming projectiles, fire a countermeasure, and destroy the threat before it hits. The execution has been anything but simple. Israel's trophy system works but struggles with top attack missiles. Russia's Arena system works in testing but fails in real combat conditions. Previous attempts to mount APS on American tanks added weight, complexity, and failure points. The M1E3 integrates the trophy APS, but with critical modifications learned from Israeli combat experience and Ukrainian battlefield data. The system uses 4 rotating radar panels mounted on the turret. They scan continuously for incoming threats, missiles, rockets, rocket-propelled grenades, and even kinetic penetrators fired from other tanks. Detection range: roughly 100 feet, which gives the system between 0.3 and 0.7 seconds to react, depending on projectile speed. When a threat is detected, the system fires a shotgun-like blast of projectiles that intercept and destroy the incoming round. Intercept success rate in Israeli combat: over 90%. The M1E3 version adds a secondary layer: electromagnetic countermeasures that jam the guidance systems of laser and radar-guided missiles before they even reach intercept range. Here's the part that makes this revolutionary. The trophy system doesn't just protect the tank it's mounted on. It can protect nearby infantry and vehicles by intercepting threats heading toward them. A company of 14 M1E3s creates an overlapping protective umbrella across an entire maneuver element. Shoot an anti-tank missile at American infantry, and the nearest Abrams detects it, tracks it, and kills it automatically. These changes combined arms warfare fundamentally. Tanks are no longer targets that infantry must protect. They're mobile defense platforms that make everything around them harder to kill. But here's where the Russians made a critical mistake. They assumed active protection was a purely defensive technology. It isn't. Every time the trophy system fires, it reveals the position of whoever shot at the tank. The M1E3's targeting computer automatically plots that position, calculates range and heading, and cues the main gun or machine guns to return fire. In wargame simulations, this cuts enemy anti-tank team survival time from minutes to seconds. Fire and you're located, wait too long, and the tank kills you anyway with superior sensors. The Russians built their anti-tank doctrine around mass, overwhelmed defenses with volume of fire. The M1E3 makes volume irrelevant. It just intercepts everything until the shooters run out of ammunition or die. So can the upgraded M1 Abrams dominate a battlefield where tanks are supposed to be obsolete? The answer is yes, but not because it's invincible. The M1E3 survives because it's networked, protected, and lethal at ranges enemy systems can't match. Russia wasn't ready for this because their doctrine still treats tanks as individual platforms. China is scrambling to field similar capabilities, but they're at least 5 years behind in sensor fusion and active protection integration. Here's what you need to remember. First, the $1.5 billion price tag isn't buying 1,500 new tanks. It's buying the R&D, testing, and initial production run for a system that will define American armored warfare for the next 30 years. The cost per tank, roughly $10 million, fully equipped, is less than the cost of losing one tank in combat and training a replacement crew. Second, this upgrade proves tanks aren't obsolete, they're evolving. The M1E3 isn't trying to be invulnerable. It's trying to be more lethal, more survivable, and more connected than anything else on the battlefield. In that race, America just took a commanding lead. Third, this sets the standard every other nation must now match. Russia's next-generation T-14 Armata was supposed to be that standard bearer. It barely exists. China's Type 99A is capable but lacks the sensor integration and active protection the M1E3 brings. European nations are watching carefully because their next tank programs will have to answer the same question. How do you make 70 tons of steel relevant in an age of precision weapons? The M1E3 enters service in 2027. By 2030, the Army plans to field over 400 upgraded vehicles, with more to follow depending on budget and geopolitical conditions. But this is just the beginning. The next evolution is already in development. Unmanned turrets, directed energy weapons for drone defense, and AI-assisted targeting that lets one crew control multiple vehicles. The question now isn't whether tanks have a future. It's whether any military can afford to compete with American armor technology. And what happens next will determine who controls the ground in the wars we're trying to prevent.